Well, hello, everybody. So, everybody's having a meltdown about this Department of Education, the federal Department of Education, being dismantled. Oh, what about the poor children? Oh, what about the poor children? You hear all these Marxists and Democrats and rhinos and social justice warriors and union bosses and others who have benefited from graft. Not graft, grift. That's what it is, grift. And that's what it's become. So today I thought I would speak frankly about a few instances in which I had opportunity to interact with that. One time was at a middle school near where I lived. I'm not going to mention the names of these schools because hopefully things are going to change. And some of it has been a while back. Maybe the teachers that were doing it weren't there or aren't there anymore. But this one middle school, it was my first opportunity to really see up close and personal the stupidity of the Department of Education, the federal mandates. Now, I've always been a writer, always. I have words for blood, okay? So that's how it works for me. Words mean something to me. I'm very happy to be able to use words in a good way, in a fun way, in a different way, but all within the confines of what language can do, and that is to put forth ideas and share them to affect either the thinking process, the emotional response, teach a lesson, whatever. Y'all know what that can be. So there I was at this middle school, and uh, I was substitute teaching. This was back when my children were younger, and I did substitute teaching so that I could take time off if they were sick, and I didn't have to get health care people, not health care babysitters, and that sort of thing. So there I was, and this class that I had, it was this odd room. By law, I had to be there. Somebody had to be there that was a representative of the school, but I wasn't allowed to do anything in the class. The entire time that I was in that class, which was all day long, several classes back to back, there was a representative from the Department of Education, the Federal Department of Education, who was overseeing with a stopwatch, mind you, how many minutes each child read quietly, not out loud, quietly. Click, you may begin reading now. And everybody had to just read, read, read. He didn't check if they knew what they were reading, if they knew what they understood it. You couldn't ask, they couldn't ask questions about what it was about. They couldn't ask for help. And I said to him, I said, why can't I interact with the children? They may have questions. And he's holding his stopwatch, and he's got this pad that he's writing on, laying next to him. And he turned to me, mean as hell, and whispered, "This is mandated by the government so that this school can get extra money. And if we don't do it exactly like they said, we don't get the money." And I said, "Okay, but the children, how do you know they're learning?" He said, "It doesn't matter. What matters is that we get the money." How cynical can you get? I wonder where that money went to. I felt really bad for those kids. Very bad. So time goes on, and I'm substitute teaching at another class, another school. It was an elementary school, and these were fifth graders. And what had happened was they had a teacher who was considered a beloved teacher in the school, and she got really bad sick and had to have surgery and a long kind of recuperation during the last month of school. Now, because I was not a certified teacher, I could not teach 5 days a week. Um, I could only teach 3 days a week. And somebody else had to come in on the other 2 days. That went on for, well, that went on for 3 weeks. Then I had to take a break, and then I came back the next to last day. And that's when I got to meet the teacher. But let me tell you what happened. These fifth graders had been assigned to take their spelling words and to look them up in the dictionary and write down the definitions, and then to use them in a sentence. This is how you learn to write. This is how you learn to write using the proper words for what it is you want to express. They were bored out of their gourds. And I said, I tell you what, here's what we're going to do. I had written there was 20 words, I think, or maybe it was 15, I forget, it doesn't matter, on the board. And I said, these are our words. I guarantee you that I know what each one of these words mean. I can use them in the order in which they are in a complete sentence accurately, and make it into being a story that you're going to want me to finish. And they said, no way. There is no way you can do that. No way. And I said, who wants to make a bet? The whole class raised their hand. Can't do it. I said, okay, if I cannot do it, then you don't have to look up the words and make the sentences and or even put them in a story, whatever. They were all for that because they knew that I was not going to be able to do that. Okay. So I picked somebody in the class and gave them a piece of chalk, and I said, you go up there next to that board, and as I use each word, and I will use them in the order. I'm not going to pick and choose and mix them up. In order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You put a check mark by it. Just put a check mark by it, and we'll all know that I used it. Is that agreeable? The whole class, that was agreeable. Suffice it to say, starting with the first word, I used each one of those words in order, correctly, in sentences that, when strung together, told a story. I did not finish the story. Now, why didn't I finish the story? Well, because there was more to it, and I ran out of words. Plus, who won the bet? That's right. I won the bet. Well, the class was so amazed. They had never seen anything like that. They got busy. They looked up the words, and this was done fast. I mean, there was no whining about it because now they saw what it was for. They understood what this exercise of looking up a word, writing down the definition, understanding it, and then using it correctly in a sentence, this is what it was for, so they could communicate. Suddenly their little brains just exploded, and it was awesome. So I was there for 3 days, and then I had to be off 2 days, and then I was back for the next 3 days. A lot of things. We did that for 3 weeks in a row. The fourth week we didn't, because that was the end of school, and the teacher was back, and we were all saying goodbye to her because she ended up being really sick and had to not come back the next year. But we also had this thing where One of the lessons had to do with the globe. I said, well, where's your globe? And I looked around the room. I didn't see a globe. They said, we don't have one. There's no globe in this room? No. Okay. And the one kid says, they've got a bunch of beach ball globes that you blow up in the library. I said, really? Well, I'm going to go, look, you stay busy on your thing here. I'm going to go to the library and I'm going to see if I can find enough so everybody can have a globe. Yeah! Yeah! They were so excited. Nobody had done that yet. So I went into the library and I asked the librarian, I said, where are those beach ball globes? She stared at me. You want the beach ball globes? I said, yes, please. She said, okay. What are you going to use them for? I said, well, we're going to blow them up and we're going to use them with our lesson. She said, oh, that's not going to work. I said, it's going to work perfectly fine. Can I have them? So I got enough for each student, hauled them back, we blew them up, and put the little hole pluggy in the whole thing. And now we were able to finish our lesson. So we got some kids to, when the lesson was finished, to take all those back to the library because we had to return them. Somebody else might have wanted them. Anyway, the kids were absolutely over the moon. They were learning something. We had discussions. They had questions. And this is what learning is. This is what teaching is all about. Well, week 3 was even more awesome. And then the next week when I came back, the principal said, I'd like to talk to you. I said, okay. And I went into his office and the teacher was there, the teacher that I was covering for. And the teacher said, Mrs. Durden, what have you done to my classroom? And I said, I don't understand the question. She said, the children, I've never seen them this excited about learning. I said, you're kidding. She said, no, never. The principal said, me either. I was horrified. I was shocked. I was, well, basically kind of disgusted later when I really got to thinking about it. How many years of these people who said they were the experts, the professionals in teaching our children, boring the hell out of the kids, not challenging them? Where's the challenge? Made me furious. But I smiled and I said, well, that's all I know how to do is, tell a good story, get them interested, and let's get excited about learning. Well, they just loved it. They loved it. So anyway, I go back to the room. The teacher was there. The students were like, yeah, you're back. We're glad to have you back. But Mrs. Durden, it's a good thing it was the last day, next to last day. But that was the next time I had a run-in up close and personal with federal government mandates sucking the freaking life and joy out of learning. Because that's what it was. That's what it was. Me and the federal mandates and these stupid things, we don't get along too well at all. Okay. Fast forward some years, I started a small business in my home. Ended up writing a children's book called, which did I write first? Which children's book did I write first? Heroes Need Practice Too. It's about firefighters. If you go to my YouTube channel, Angela Durden, I have one of the playlists that I have up there is for children. And I just read that book along with the second in that series, The Balloon That Would Not Pop, so that kids can, I read to them on the screen like I read to children in schools. So my daughter, she grew up. She had a couple of children. But before she had the second child, I got her to begin calling schools for me, because what had happened was a friend of mine said, Angela, I know a librarian in this other city, a school librarian. She's looking for something to fire up the minds of her students about writing. I said, oh, well, I think I can put together something really good. She said, oh, great. So I called that librarian. The librarian says, come on, let's talk about it. I drove over there. We talked about it. I told her what I wanted to do. She said, this is absolutely what I would like to do. So uh, we went and did it. It was just a one-off. I thought it was just a one-off. And it was very good. But that librarian, started spreading the word to other librarians. And then other librarians started having me into their schools. And then some principals started noticing how well the children were responding to just me there for an hour doing this set program, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. And it was awesome. Then there came a point where this program that I put together a packet, uh, 5 pages, 5 pages, big type, and um, it was called Punctuation is Power, and uh, I explained to the students, what the purpose of punctuation was. Now, I know that sounds kind of boring, but the way I approach it is this. It's in the manner of the storytelling. And just like I did with that 5th grade class before, what I would do is I would say, okay, we're going to take this real long word. Maybe you know it. It goes anti-disestablishmentarianism. And the second word is students. And I said, take the letters from these 2 words, put them together, and make as many words as you can without repeating a letter more than once, unless it's used in there more than once. So the students would do that. I give them 5 minutes. I had a stopwatch and everything. It was awesome. 5 minutes. How many can make the most? 4 minutes. 3, 2, 1 minute. 30 seconds. 10 seconds. You can see them just getting faster and faster and faster and faster with what they were trying to do. And I say, well, time, stop. And they go. They had a ball. Teachers and librarians would be standing in the back of the room watching this and going, what are you doing? And I just wait. So then I would, because I did have just so much period of time to get across certain objects of or purposes of writing and word usage and punctuation, I made it really fun, very timed, very fast, very interactive. So I said, okay, we need 3 words. Raise your hand if you think you got a good word. Look at your list. They'd look at their list and up would go hands. I go, what's your word? I didn't care what it was. Didn't matter. That's a good word. And I'd write it on this whiteboard thing. Another word. And then another word. And boom, boom, boom. We got our 3 words. Okay. Now we're going to pick a character. Do we want the character to be male or female? How many want a male character? How many want a female? And then the class would look around and I'd go, okay, it's a male character this time, or it's a female character this time. Okay, do we want, so I would write male or female, whichever they chose. Do we want this story to take place on Earth, on another planet, on outer space, going through space? Where do we want the story to take place? Suggestions. And we would get 2 or 3 suggestions, and then they'd vote on which one they liked the best. Okay, so I'd write that up there. Okay, so now we've got these 3 words. This character that's a female, what's her name? Boom, write it down. In this place, now we're going to write a story using those 3 words, that character, and that location. And you're going to have 5 minutes to do it. But Mrs. Jordan, 5 minutes is a long enough to write a story. I said, I didn't say you had to finish it. Just use those 3 words in 5 minutes. Use the character and put them in a situation. That's all. That's all you got to do. So inevitably, somebody would raise their hand and say, well, this is somebody who was very OCD, and what if we get the periods wrong or we don't put a question? Don't worry about that. In the creative process is not where you worry about punctuation. Just don't worry about it. And then they go, Mrs. Durden, it can't be done. And they're all just shaking their head. The teachers and the librarians in the back would be going, can't be done. They won't do it. And I go, okay, who wants to make a bet? And I would make a bet with them. If I can use these 3 words. Now, before I walked into this room, did I know y'all were going to find these 3 words and put them on your paper? And they would go, no. And I go, okay. And after you put them on your paper, did I know that as a group, y'all were going to choose these 3 words? No. And did I know you were going to choose a female character by the name of Samantha, whatever? No. And did I know that you wanted this to take place in a spaceship hurtling through space? No. Okay. Well, I'm going to take just a couple of minutes and I'm going to tell you a story. And I'm going to use these 3 words. Who wants to mark them off? I'd hand a little black marker to somebody and they would mark them off as I used each thing. And I would do it in 2 minutes. 2 minutes. And I would stop and they'd say, well, what's the rest of the story? I go, well, I don't know, because we don't have a lot of time for me to tell a story. But now y'all can see that these 3 words, that character and that location, you got 5 minutes. Turn your pages to the blank page. Got your pencils ready? Anybody need to sharpen a pencil? Nope, they all had sharp pencils. And they were just sitting there waiting. And I go, okay, you're going to have 5 minutes. And it doesn't have to be a complete story. It doesn't even have to be a really good one. Just start it. But Mrs. Durden, we're all going to write the same thing because we're all got to do, yeah, well, let's see if you do. Well, some students I'd click start, let's go, do the countdown like I did before. But some students, it was very interesting. One student raised her hand and said, can I finish the story you started? Sure, of course, but you still have to reuse those words on your own. Okay. Some came up with stuff awesome stuff, great stuff. Teachers and librarians in the back going, I didn't know they could do this. Yes, they can do this. Why are you not challenging them? Of course, that wasn't a conversation I had in front of the children. But at the end of the 5 minutes, click time, pencils down. Okay. Who wants to get up here and read their story out loud for the class? And then we'll talk about it. And that's where we would get into punctuation. And we would discuss the merits of putting a comma between 2 words. The merits. What would it do to it if we put a comma instead of a period? What if we put a question mark? How would that change it? What kind of thoughts does this give you? These kids ate it up. To compare them to a dried sponge in the desert who finally found an oasis and was soaking it all up would be an understatement. I was at one school where they had, it was all day long, 5th grade classes, back to back, except for during lunch. And there was this one 5th grade class that came in. There were 2 boys in it that the teacher and the librarian both said, look, there's 2 boys in here. They're troublemakers. If you have any trouble with them, just call me. We'll get them out because they do nothing but make trouble. Do you know that those 2 boys not only did not make one bit of trouble, When it was time for their class to leave, they came up to me and they said, Mrs. Durden, we are having a discussion. These are the two boys that caused the trouble. We're having a discussion. He thinks I should put a comma here. I think I should put a period. What do you think? I said, well, why did you choose a comma? To the other one, why did you choose a period? And we're having this discussion until finally they went, okay, we see how it works. The teacher comes up and says, these boys need to leave this room right now. I said, we're having a discussion on the merits of commas and periods. And she just stared at me like, what fresh hell is this? The librarian contacted me a few weeks later about those two boys. She said, I don't know what you did, but those two boys now are no trouble. They are no trouble, not causing a bit of trouble. They are so into their writing and all their other schoolwork, especially, a lot of schoolwork involves words. What does this mean? How does it work? Boom, boom, boom. Because they were told what the purpose of writing was. They weren't punished. They were engaged. Kids are told to write a story and use the punctuation correctly. And oftentimes, okay, and I'm just going to be blunt, teachers don't even know what the hell they're doing about it. They don't. They don't understand what the purpose of it is. So, of course, they're teaching kids in a way that's not beneficial to them. But this is what I've done my whole life, and I do know it. Will I make a mistake sometime? Yes, of course. Everybody does. But to punish someone while they're learning, see, you got this one wrong. You made a D- because you got so many wrong. No, that's for tests. That's for tests. But in the learning stage, you don't punish. You don't punish. Why are these people punishing students if they cannot get it right away? Everybody learns on their own. But you see, that's the sorry state of the Department of Education, Federal Bureau, and what they have done to teachers. Okay, I got some more stories, man. This is okay. I was speaking to a professor of English, and this was not too long ago, and she was completely bemoaning the fact that the students that she was teaching didn't think they needed to learn English. They could talk. They figured they knew English. And when she would try to really help them understand, no, they need to understand this, she was politely informed that the student teachers didn't need to know any of this. That they are being taught exactly what they need to do, which is to follow the United States government's federal guidelines on what day to give information to the children, how to grade them. You didn't have to answer questions. You didn't have to understand any subject that you were teaching because you never taught. You gave them stuff. You read from a paper, hoped they got it. Boy, that lit a candle under my little boo, honey. Let me tell you. Or candle? No, it lit a rocket. It made me mad. I was furious. There was nothing she could do about it, though, because she was being punished herself for trying to teach them to be teachers. And if it wasn't for the fact that she was so close to retirement and couldn't afford to be fired, because then she wouldn't be able to, where else would she get a job? Where else? Okay, so there's that story. Now here's the really, all of them featuring the students, even the student teachers, because they're young and stupid. What do they know? They don't know that they're being taught incorrectly because they've never seen real teaching. They get mad when they see real teaching. Teacher's picking on me because he want me to do the work. And then the administration says, stop picking on them. We're not going to get anybody else to come here if you pick on them. So all that is sad. But this next story will make you mad. Okay. So I was hired to come into a school for a period of, let's see, September, October, November, December, January, and February. Once a month for each fifth grade class. There was 5 fifth grade classes, if I remember correctly. And I was to walk them through this program that I had because the principal had heard about the program from somebody else, and wanted me to do it. And she figured anything to help her students. She really, really wanted to help her students. So I was excited. I was really excited. This will be the second time that I had done such a program. The first one was an absolute success, and I'll tell you about that after this. So I go into this school, and I'm there for the first week with the kids, and I mean, they each have their packet. They keep the packets. I designed a special packet. It's a long story. Won't go into it because it wasn't just a 1 hour thing over and over and over. It was a program that built on what came before. And they each had their own packet and they each had their own notes, and they would stack them up in the classroom, and when I was coming, they would get them. It was awesome. These kids, they were just awesome. Well, the second week, the principal says, I'm getting some pushback from a lot of the teachers. A lot of the teachers in the school are mad that you're here. I said, okay. And I'd only been there 1 day. She says, so I want you to come 1 week, and before you start the next one with the kids, and I want you to take these teachers through this program. Show them what it's going to accomplish. I said, okay, I can do that. No problem. So a date was made, and all the teachers were asked to stay after. I think maybe it was an in-service day. I really don't remember. But we had them all in the cafeteria. They each had a packet. I figured, man, we're going to bump through this thing, no problemo. I didn't even get into this 30 minutes, and already I could tell there was not a teacher in that group, not one out of the entire frickin' school that could do this work. So I told him, I said, well, look, y'all just talk amongst yourselves while you work on this next little thing here. And I'm going to go over and talk to the principal, because she was standing over there off to the side. And I went over to her, and I'm smiling and everything. She goes, how's it going? I said, we can't finish this. She said, what do you mean? I said, well, we can't finish this because these teachers are stupid. They are not educated. They don't want to be educated. And I feel sorry for your students. She goes, yeah, that's what I thought. She says, okay, I tell you what, I'll just call an end to it. I said, good, because they will not be happy with me, and you won't be happy with me either. And I would prefer to, do all this awesome stuff for the kids that will learn. She agreed. Teachers didn't even think anything about it. Teacher says, we need to get back to something. Sorry, Miss Durden, blah, blah, blah. No problem. I understand. Well, y'all have a good day. So here comes me coming into these fifth grade classes once a month, building on this program. The kids were excited. They just couldn't get enough of it. But I noticed in this one class, there was a boy that he so wanted to understand what this whole thing was about. And after observing him for a little bit, I realized he was pretty dyslexic, and that's why he wasn't understanding what was on the paper. So about the third week, one of the lessons, practice sessions, if you will, was to write any sentence. It didn't matter what it was. Choose to write a sentence. And then I would pick 2 or 3 of those sentences. We would write them on the board, and then we would all edit them together. And whoever sentence was up on the board would be taking questions from the class who wanted clarification or understanding of what was there. And the class was like, oh my God, this is so great. Well, this one boy really ticked me off too, because I said I'm going to get him up there because he needed some positive reinforcement. He was not stupid. He was very smart. But because of this dyslexia and nobody addressing it, he was the butt of class jokes. And I told the kids one time, I said, no, we don't do that. When people are here to learn, you don't make fun of them. You don't make fun of them. You don't make fun of them when they ask questions so that they can learn. Would you want to be made fun of? Asked I of one of the kids that was making fun of him. No. What are you making fun of him? Now come on, let's get busy. Well, this young man, I had him, he worked hard. He worked really hard on a sentence. And yes, misspellings, things convoluted, things misshapen, didn't matter. I didn't care. And he was one of the ones that I chose for his particular class to get up and write his sentence up there. It took him a while. It took him a while because he wanted it to be as best as possible. And I said, don't worry about it. Take your time. And I would be talking to the class, and we would be talking over strategy and various other things about words and blah, blah, blah. It was awesome. And he said, okay. And he stood up at the board holding his piece of chalk. He was holding himself rigid, just rigid, but hopeful at the same time. He hoped that he would be just like everybody else. And I said, okay, well, who would like to read this sentence out loud? So somebody read the sentence out loud. And I said, does anybody have any questions for whatever his name was? I'll call him Bobby. His name wasn't Bobby, but I'll call him that. Does anybody have a question for Bobby? And hands went up. What is that word right there? And of course it was misshapen, misspelled. And he would think about it, and he'd go, well, it should be, because in his head he could say it. He just couldn't put it down on the paper. It should be da 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 da. Why? And he would look at me, and I'd say, well, now you need to ask them why they're asking that question. And he would go, why are you asking that question? And the other child would say, well, because I couldn't tell. But if it's this other word that you said, then the spelling would be da 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 da, and we would all fix it together, all of us. We changed commas, we changed the endings of sentences with question marks to periods to whatever. You get what I'm saying. That boy was interacting with the class in a learning style. He was up on the board erasing things, making it better, and they go, you got your E upside down. Oh, and he would do it. They would go, yeah, you got it right. They were cheering him on. They were all together learning, practicing, learning. It was a wonderful thing to see. So we got his sentence done, and I said, okay, somebody want to read that sentence? So they did, and he said, does this say what you were thinking in your head? He goes, it is. Well, yay! Thank you so much, Bobby. Wasn't that awesome? And that's what everybody who got up and wrote a sentence, and we discussed it, got. He was not treated any differently. He was treated as one of them. He sits down. Towards the end of that hour with that class, the teacher came in. And he had raised his hand to answer a question, and I was getting ready to call on him when the teacher from the back of the room, I kid you not, she said, "Don't call on him. He's stupid." The whole class just went like this, staring at me. I turned to the teacher and I said, "If you ever walk into my classroom again and call any student stupid, you may gonna be going to the principal's office. That is not allowed, ever." She didn't know what to do. She had no clue what to do. She left. We finished up the class. Well, I never told the principal about it because you know what? Why? I think the principal knew what kind of teachers she had in that school, and most of them, there might have been some that were sincere. I'm not saying they were evil people. They might have been very sincere. They might have thought they were doing a good job, but they weren't. And it was the children who suffered. The children who suffered because some mandates from the federal government, from some freaking bureaucrats who wanted to control, made very bad policy. Yeah. Came graduation day for my course. And it was right before some national test that they give, a reading comprehension or something. I don't know. It was some, I was doing all this in preparation to get their scores up, is what it was. But I said, I will make graduation certificates for each child. Told them this at the beginning. If you're here for all, however many it was, 5 or 6 of my monthly things, you will get that, and then we'll take a picture of all of us together. Oh, they were so excited, and I did. I made color ones, printed them out on I had a real nice HP large format thing that could take 8.5 by 11 up to 11 by 17. It was awesome. Wore that sucker out. Anyway, I made, let's see, there was 5 classes, I think, with about 25 students. So what's that, 125 of those things. Signed, had the principal sign them, dated them. We had a ceremony at the end where everyone's name was called and we passed all these things out. I mean, it was an exciting time. It was really exciting, and it was real. It wasn't fake. They did the work. They were so excited. I still have the pictures taken from that day. I brought out my camera with the tripod and set it up and put a timer on and got a picture of all of us, and I'd show them to you, but it might identify some people I don't want identified because I asked the teacher to be in the picture too. So that's that. I was very upset that these students, look, if in one school they're being ill-served, you know, that's the school's problem. But if in most schools they're being ill-served, well, that's the federal government for you. Tying teachers' hands, teaching them bad methodology. Now, here's the next one. It happened the year before up in North Georgia. And there was this elementary school that had been the last on the national testing things that they do every year in the county. Last in the county every year. And the principal had heard about me and called. And this is when I put together the 5-month-long once a month that builds thing. He said, "My kids are not stupid." I said, "I know that." He said, "So why are we last?" I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, it's because your teachers don't understand language. They don't understand what the purpose of language is. They don't understand any of that. How do you think they're going to teach English or language arts if they themselves do not understand it?" He said, agreed. What can you do? I said, I tell you what, for this amount of money, because I had to travel a long ways and it was all day long with these kids. For this amount of money, I can put together this thing, and I can tell you it should have a beneficial effect on your scores. He said, okay. 5 months I went up there once a month. Same, had the same packet designed to reinforce what reading and writing and language was all about and teaching them how to do it. I didn't teach to a test. I taught to the basics of what it meant to be able to write and read and think and put together a story. So we met in, I did not go to the individual classrooms. They had an empty classroom that had a giant blackboard, went from one side of the wall to the next. It was great. And they just used the room for storage. They had a bunch of extra desks in there, and they said they would bring the kids in. I said, okay, great. Well, it was great. I mean, these kids, they took to reading and writing like a duck to water. It was as natural to them as breathing, and they understood it. The last class that I would be teaching would be 3 or 4 days before they were to take some kind of a national test, and I think these were 4th graders. So I came for the last one, and I was really excited, and I said, now, when you go to take this test, remember the things you've learned. So when they're asking you this, that, and the other, just remember these things. And I had laid out all the conversation. I had a picture of it somewhere. This board was full of just all these notes that showed how language just came together as we went through each one of these lessons. It was fabulous. So I couldn't wait to find out how that turned out. The principal, he thought it was going to turn out well, but he said he would let me know. So sometime before the end of the school year, this was was it end of March, middle of March that they took that test. He called me. He said, now, Angela, I want to tell you why I felt free to do something, out of the box with you. And he says, because this is my last year, I am retiring. What are they going to do? Fire me? If it didn't work. And I said, no, I don't guess not. I said, well, how'd it turn out? He says, well, everybody is kind of flummoxed. Those 4th graders in that school that had always come in last came in first in the county. First. Man, it just brings tears to my eyes now thinking about how awesome that experience was. And I would like to see more of that kind of thing. I have other things I have to do, so I don't want to be full-time in a school. In order to be full-time in a school, your whole life has to change. You can't, it would be a full-time job. But to have somebody come in for, honestly, it wasn't a lot of money at all, to come in and to take 1 hour with each class and explain to them and walk them through and not punish them, but challenge them. Challenge is not punishment, teachers. Challenge is not punishment. Well, now that we're going to be getting rid of the federal, that means state boards of education, which are eat up with unions too. And the unions, they definitely don't want, no, I don't care what you say. I don't want to hear any union person telling me that they care about the kids. They do not. They care about their jobs. They care about their positions. They care about how much money they can spend to go on their trips to do whatever it is they got to do. No, they don't care about the kids. You can't prove it to me otherwise. Just try. Because if you did care about the kids, teachers' unions, you wouldn't be punishing teachers who don't want to be in a union. You wouldn't be pushing crap methodologies down anybody's throat. And our scores, student scores will be higher, much higher. They used to be a heck of a lot higher. Remember that? Remember those days? Y'all have screwed over kids. You've screwed over parents. You've screwed over society. You've screwed over your communities. And all for money and power. Shame on you. Anyway. I can't help it that I'm the most brilliant woman in the world. I know. And that I've got this thing. And maybe other teachers can't teach like I can. I've tried turning it into something that a teacher can walk the students through. But the problem with that is that these teachers already don't know how to write. They write worse than a first grader puts together a sentence. They use jargon. They use words that are so Marxist in origin and they don't even know it. It's no wonder students aren't learning. So teaching the teachers has got to start in first grade. This is where teachers are going to be coming from. Teaching the love of language, helping them to appreciate that it is something to be enjoyed, not punished because they misspelled a word, not punished because they didn't put a period where you, the teacher, thought it should go. And oftentimes, it doesn't matter. A teacher may say a period needs to go here when they're wrong because the meaning of the sentence will change or whatever. Punctuation is power. And so I would leave the students with that. I would say, look, punctuation is power. Don't misuse your power. And they would go, yeah. And so they would discuss amongst themselves even after I was gone. How to use commas, where to put one. They would try this, try that. Oh, writing is such fun and awesome. And I wish they could experience that. I am only one woman, and I can't do it alone. I would if I could. Well, that is my my long speech on the United States Department of Education and Teachers Unions. They're a piece of crap junk that has done nothing but destroy the education of the citizens of this country, starting way back, way back. So if you're one of these that's whining about the Department of Education being defunded, I have no sympathy for you whatsoever. And if you are a teachers union going, but we have the expertise. We have the expertise. No, you don't. You're an expert in failing. An expert in failing. That's what you are. And you want your children, to fail too. Well, everybody, I'm going to end it there, and we'll see you another day. Bye.